Hello, and welcome again to Classic Film, Montgomery Clift, and Other Great Actors podcasts. Before we talk about our actor today, Vincent Price, I'd like to mention that I now have a YouTube channel under Classic Film, Montgomery Clift, and Other Great Actors, where you can find some fun segments and some cool interviews. So go check that out when you have a moment. And as always, please check out my blog and website at Classic Film, Montgomery Clift, and Other Great Actors. Today we're going to be talking about Vincent Price. Vincent Price beyond the realm of horror. Though known for his work in the horror genre, Vincent Price has so much more to offer. Learn more about this fascinating, talented, and sweet man. When you think Vincent Price, you generally think horror. After all, when one has the unofficial title of Master of Horror, it just seems natural to associate Vincent Price with the horror films. Not to mention his theatrical style of acting was well suited to this genre, as well as his ability to use his voice to great atmospheric effect. Of course, this is a very one-dimensional view of Vincent Price. Come with me on a journey as we learn more about Vincent Price, man of many talents, an affable, likable man who is quite capable of conforming to any acting genre. Let's pull back the curtain and discover the real man behind the image. Vincent Leonard Price Jr. was born May 27, 1911, in St. Louis, Missouri, to Vincent and Marguerite Price. Vincent's grandfather invented Dr. Price's baking powder, which was the first cream of tartar-based baking powder. He was therefore born to a wealthy family. Vincent attended Yale, where he pursued an art history degree. This was a passion that would continue throughout his life. He eventually amassed a great art collection and would open several art galleries in his lifetime. He also donated a great deal of money and numerous pieces from his own collection to the East Los Angeles College to enable them to establish the Vincent Price Art Museum in order that students might have the opportunity to learn and take an interest in art. Vincent then attended the Courtauld Institute of Art in London with the purpose of achieving a master's degree in fine arts. However, he soon became interested in the theater and began appearing in stage plays. A perhaps little-known fact is that he did begin his acting career at Orson Welles' famed Mercury Theater around 1935. Vincent was quickly drawn to Hollywood and films, and in 1938 began working in films as a character actor. His first film was Service de Luxe, 1938, in which he had a leading role. He followed that up with The Private Lives of Elizabeth and Essex, 1939, which starred Bette Davis and Errol Flynn. He plays a villainous nobleman in this particular role, and, indeed, when not playing in horror roles, this was a common type of character for him. His next film, Tower of London, 1939, paired him with fellow horror great Boris Karloff. He would go on to act with Karloff in several other horror films later in his career. In 1940, Vincent starred in his first horror film, The Invisible Man Returns. However, he was then back to character roles over his next several films. One film of note is Song of Bernadette, 1943, in which he plays prosecutor Vital Dutour. He was cast in well-known film noir Laura in 1944, starring alongside Gene Tierney and Dana Andrews. Laura is still very talked about in the film noir industry even today. There are some clips of Laura and Vincent Price's performance on the website and blog. After Laura came numerous roles in the late 1940s, again mostly character-type roles and generally villainous. Some notable movies during this time period were Leave Her to Heaven, 1945, again with Gene Tierney, The Three Musketeers, 1948, which included a star-studded cast, and The Bribe, 1949. In 1950, he was finally given a leading man-type role in an interesting movie called The Baron of Arizona, 1950. It's a fascinating movie about a con man who manages to defraud the United States government by claiming to own the rights to the entire territory of Arizona. Now, there are some clips from this movie on the blog, and I would highly recommend you to check them out because it's a really interesting performance by Vincent Price and a very interesting film. In the early 1950s, Vincent did have some comic-type roles, such as Champagne for Caesar, 1950, and Curtain Call at Cactus Creek, 1950. He also had a hilariously hammy role as a swashbuckler-type actor in 1951's film noir His Type of Woman. The rest of the movie is quite serious and very film noirish, with Robert Mitchum trying to escape a noted gangster who is, strangely enough, trying to steal his face. Yes, that is the premise. Anyhow, enter Vincent Price as the actor rendezvousing with Robert Mitchum's love interest, Jane Russell. Vincent pretty much steals the movie. And again, there are clips of this film on the website, and I would again highly recommend checking that out. It's a very hilarious performance. In the mid-1950s, Vincent really began taking on a lot of horror film roles, such as House of Wax, 1953, The Mad Magician, 1954, and The Fly, 1958. He also intermixed radio and television work as well in the 1950s, along with non-horror roles, including a role in the great epic The Ten Commandments, 1956, playing another sinister-type character. He also played the devil in The Story of Mankind, 1957, which boasted an impressive all-star cast and numerous cameos. In the 1960s, he continued on in the horror genre with many low-budget horror movies. Vincent helped make these films a success. He did several Edgar Allan Poe movies. He was a big fan of Edgar Allan Poe, such as House of Usher, 1960, The Pit and the Pendulum, 1961, and The Raven, 1963. Also notable was Last Man on Earth, 1964, which was an adaptation of Richard Matheson novel I Am Legend. He also did more comedy films such as his Dr. Goldfoot movies, 1965 and 1966. Vincent also had numerous television appearances in the 1960s, including being a regular on Hollywood Squares. His career in the 1970s continued mostly with horror movies, television shows, and radio broadcasts. He also did some stage work in the mid-1970s with then-wife Coral Brown. Musicians began to collaborate with him, including Alice Cooper and, of course, most famously, Michael Jackson in Thriller. He also recorded his own cover of The Monster Mash. He had cameos on shows such as The Brady Bunch and also The Muppet Show. Another thing that Vincent Price was involved in the late 1960s and 1970s was cooking. Vincent was a gourmet cook and, along with his second wife Mary, authored many cookbooks. Vincent also had a cooking program in the early 1970s on British TV and recorded several audio cooking tutorials. I imagine if he was alive today, he would have a YouTube channel dedicated to cooking. Anywho, back to the movies. In the early 1980s, he narrated a Tim Burton short film, which would later lead to the role in Edward Scissorhands. He also starred in The House of the Long Shadows, 1983, with other known horror actors Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, and John Carradine. In fact, he was a great friend of Christopher Lee, and they also shared the same birthday. Not the same year, though. He did the voice of Professor Ratigan in The Great Mouse Detective for Walt Disney in 1986. In 1987, he appeared in a film which I feel finally showcased his acting talents. This film is called The Whales of August. This film boasted an A-list cast of old Hollywood actors, Bette Davis, Lillian Gish, Ann Sothern, and Harry Carey Jr. It's a most touching film, and Vincent really gives an amazing, subtle, and somewhat tragic performance. There are also clips of this film on my website as well, and again, this is another one I would highly recommend checking out Vincent's performance in. Vincent's last film was one very beloved in popular culture, and I think even recognizable to today's youth, though perhaps beginning to fade a bit. Edward Scissorhands, 1990. He plays the lonely old man in the mansion that constructs a son, Edward Scissorhands, played by Johnny Depp. This role was written specifically for Vincent Price and was supposed to be a much larger role. However, Vincent was in poor health by this time and unable to film all the required scenes, so his part was cut down considerably. Vincent at this time was now suffering from emphysema and Parkinson's disease. He died on October 25, 1993, of lung cancer at the age of 82. While researching this, I read that after Dolores Del Rio's death, Vincent would sign her name when asked for an autograph. Of course, folks asked him why he would do this. He responded, quote, "I made a promise to her on her deathbed that I would not let her be forgotten," end quote. can we not try to do the same for Vincent Price? Can we let him not be forgotten? This is the end of Vincent Price Beyond the Realm of Horror. Please subscribe to my podcasts and check out my blog and YouTube channel, all at Classic Film, Montgomery Clift, and Other Great Actors. I'll catch you at the next podcast.